There are some phrases that are they're like linguistic wallpaper in our lives.
Yeah.
They're just there.
Mm-hmm.
You hear them so much, probably since you were a little kid, that you stop thinking about what they actually mean. They're just background noise.
Well, it is what it is.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
time will tell. But I think the heavyweight champion of all of these, the one we have all heard, fighting for a spot in line at schools, is the first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Oh, it's absolutely ubiquitous. It's in books. It's in movies. It's probably like stitched on a pillow at your grandmother's house right now. It has totally seeped into the culture.
Right. And usually when we use it, let's be honest, it's this gentle way of managing people.
Yeah.
It's a way of saying, hey, stop shoving, or don't worry, you'll get your turn. It feels safe. Like a rule for good manners.
It's a consolation prize, that phrase.
It is. But today we are doing a deep dive into some notes and excerpts from a text called The Divine Reversal, Humility in the Kingdom of God. And if there's one headline that jumped right out at me, it's that this phrase is absolutely not about manners. And it is definitely not safe.
No, it certainly isn't. I mean, if you treat it just as this little maxim for politeness, you are missing the seismic shift the source material is actually describing.
Seismic is the perfect word. Because what we found in the research is that this isn't some clever saying to keep kids in line. It's a complete dismantling of how human society usually works. It's radical.
It really is. And what's fascinating here is that the source material frames this proverb, which, for context, comes from Jesus in Matthew 20 and Mark 10, as a fundamental eversion.
An inversion.
It's not just shuffling the deck. The text calls it a reversal of earthly status, pride, and societal expectations.
A reversal of expectations. I love that. So our mission today is to really dig into this idea of the divine reversal. We're going to find out why the people our world calls winners might actually be, well, losing in this specific framework.
Right.
And we're going to look at a parable that, I have to admit, it triggered me a little bit when I first read it.
It triggers almost everyone who reads it with a modern mindset.
Right.
It's designed to.
And we're going to ask the tough question, if this reversal is real, what does that even mean for our ambition? Because, we live in a world that screams at us to be first.
And this text tells us that the first, at least how we define it, are in some pretty serious trouble.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of it, the status flip. The source material starts by defining its terms, because first and last here, it's not about your place in line.
Right. According to the source, first refers to a very specific mindset. When the text talks about the first, it's pointing to those who are actively seeking power. It's about self-righteousness. It's about a feeling of superiority.
See, that's so interesting, because I think in our culture, we conflate first with best. If you're first, you work the hardest, you're the most talented, you're the MVP, but the source is adding this whole moral dimension to it.
Exactly. It points out that this firstness, if you can call it that, is fueled by self-reliance. It's about people who are banking on their own status to validate themselves. The text uses the rich young ruler as the archetype for this.
Okay, let's talk about him for a second, because in that story, this guy is the total package.
He is. He's young, he's wealthy, he's got a position of authority. In any era, 1st century or 21st century, this guy is a success story. He's on the cover of Forbes 30 Under 30. He's done everything right.
And yet, the source uses him as a warning.
Because he's relying on his status, he thinks his resume, his firstness, is his ticket in. But the divine reversal basically says that in the kingdom of God, that currency doesn't spend. In fact, his wealth and status are actually obstacles.
So then on the flip side, how does the source define the last? Because, last usually means you were lazy, you didn't hustle.
And that's the trap of our earthly way of thinking. The source defines the last not as the lazy, but as the humble.
The humble.
They're the ones who serve others. And, this is important, the source notes they are the overlooked.
The overlooked. That's a powerful word choice. So we're not talking about someone who is just slow in a race. We're talking about people society doesn't even see.
Exactly. The people who don't have a PR team. The ones who aren't posting their wins on social media. And the mechanism in the divine reversal is that in the kingdom of God, this whole hierarchy gets flipped upside down. It's not just that the humble get a participation trophy. It's that those who strive for worldly dominance, the first, are humble, they're brought low, and the marginalized, the last, are exalted.
It's like the world is an upside-down pyramid, and this concept just flips it right side up.
Or maybe, from the perspective of the source, the world is already upside down, and we just don't notice because everyone else is walking on the ceiling, too. This reversal is actually setting things right.
That is a tough pill to swallow, though, because
Yeah.
we're sort of wired to want to be first. It's survival of the fittest. It's how you get the best resources.
It is, and that's why the text points out that this phrase often comes up in discussions about who is greatest.
Which is just hilarious, because that is the most human conversation ever. Even the disciples in the stories, who are literally hanging out with Jesus, are constantly bickering about who gets the best seat in heaven.
It's the eternal human obsession with ranking. We need to know the pecking order. And then this phrase just drops into that obsession like a bomb and says, your rankings are irrelevant because your criteria are all wrong.
Okay, so if the criteria are wrong, let's dig into the why. Why is this system rigged against the high achievers? Is it just punishing success? Is God anti-rich?
That's a really good question. But the source points to something it calls an internal perspective. This is the real key to understanding the whole inversion.
Okay, eternal perspective. Unpack that for us.
Well, it's described as a call to reject self-reliance. The source says this is all about focusing on spiritual success over worldly success. If you're first in the world, you're often relying on your own power, your own money, your reputation. You are full.
You're full.
Yes. And the divine reversal suggests that you can't receive anything new if your hands are already full of your own trophies. The last are first because their hands are empty. They aren't relying on themselves, so they're open to relying on God.
That makes sense in theory, but I really want to see how it plays out on the ground. Because the source material points to a specific story, a parable, that illustrates this. And like I said earlier, this is where I started to get a little defensive for the first guys.
The parable of the workers in the vineyard.
Yes, the deep dive within the deep dive.
It's a polarizing story, for sure.
So for everyone listening, let's just lay out the story as the source describes it. You have a vineyard owner, and it's harvest time.
Correct. And in that context, harvest is urgent. You need people in the field now. So early in the morning, let's say 6 a.m., first light, he hires a group of workers. They agree on a wage for the day. A denarius.
Which, to be clear, was a fair wage, a standard day's pay.
Absolutely. It was a good deal. I work all day, you pay me X, everyone shakes on it, everyone's happy.
Standard stuff.
Yeah.
A fair day's wage for a fair day's work.
Yeah.
But then the owner goes out again at 9 a.m., then noon, then 3 p.m., and he hires more people each time.
Right. Which already shows you something. He's not just trying to be efficient. He's looking for people who need work.
But then, and here's the kicker, he goes out at the 11th hour. Let's call it 5 p.m. The sun is going down. The workday ends at 6.
And he finds a group of guys just standing around. He asks why they aren't working, and they say, because no one hired us. So he tells them, go and work in my vineyard.
So these guys work for what, 1 hour?
Maybe less. Just a tiny fraction of the day. They barely have time to break a sweat before the whistle blows.
Okay, so now it's pay time. And just imagine being one of the 6 a.m. guys. You have been sweating in the sun for 12 hours. Your back hurts, you're thirsty, and you see the guys who showed up at 5 p.m. fresh as a daisy walking up to get paid.
And the owner intentionally pays the last guys first, just to make sure everyone sees it happen.
And he hands the 1 hour workers a full day's wage, a whole denarius.
The exact same reward.
Now, I'm doing the math in my head. If I'm the 6 a.m. guy, I'm thinking, okay, if he got 1 coin for 1 hour and I work 12 hours, I'm about to make bank, I'm getting 12 coins, or at least a huge bonus.
That is earthly logic. That's the logic of merit. Input equals output.
But that is not what happens.
No. The 6 a.m. workers get to the front expecting their big bonus, and the owner hands them a single denarius.
See, that's where my brain just starts to glitch. It feels like a total betrayal.
Yeah.
If I'm that worker, I'm filing a grievance. I'm calling my union rep. It is objectively unfair.
And in the parable, they do complain. They're furious. They say, these last men worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the heat of the day.
And they're right, aren't they? They did do more work.
In a market economy, yes, they are absolutely right. But this is where we have to pivot to the theological point. The text isn't giving us a lesson on, payroll management.
Thank goodness for that.
It's illustrating a concept the source calls grace over merit.
Grace over merit. That sounds nice, on a coffee mug, but it feels brutal in this story.
It feels brutal because we are addicted to merit. We want to earn our way. But the expert analysis in our source material explains that the reward, which stands for salvation or inclusion in the kingdom, is based on the generosity of the giver, not the effort of the worker.
So it's not a salary, it's a gift.
Precisely. The source explains that salvation and reward are based on grace. You can't earn more of it just because you showed up earlier. You either receive it or you don't. The owner chose to be generous to the latecomers. He didn't cheat the early workers. He paid them exactly what they agreed to.
So he gave the early workers justice, but he gave the late workers mercy.
Exactly. And the early workers were angry because they wanted the distinction. They didn't just want their pay. They wanted to be recognized as superior to the guys who showed up late.
Wow, that hits home. Their anger revealed they were working for the status, not just the wage.
And that is the trap of the first. They felt entitled. And entitlement is the enemy of this kingdom. The source points out that the last, the ones who knew they didn't deserve a full day's wage but got it anyway, they understand the nature of grace. They probably held that coin with tears in their eyes.
Whereas the first group held it with resentment.
Which brings us right back to the phrase. The first became last because their pride and their entitlement basically excluded them from the joy of the reward. The last became first because they received the grace with humility.
So the unfairness is the point. It's unfair in the good way if you're the one who needs the grace.
It is scandalously generous. And that brings us to the broader theme that just runs through this whole text: humility and the marginalized. Because this isn't just about the afterlife, it's about how we treat people right now.
Yeah, let's talk about the people involved here, because the source has a whole section on service as greatness.
And this is another one of those massive inversions. The source interprets humility and service as the actual definition of true greatness.
Which, again, is the polar opposite of how we define greatness. Usually greatness means you have people serving you.
Right. If you walk into a big corporation, you know who the great people are. They're the ones being waited on. They don't carry their own luggage. They don't get their own coffee.
And if you're at the bottom of that ladder, you're the one fetching.
But the divine reversal, according to our source, flips that completely. True greatness is redefined as serving others, not being served. The person fetching the coffee in this framework might actually be closer to greatness than the person drinking it, depending on the posture of their heart.
That is...
Wow.
It's so countercultural. It makes me think about how we structure our entire lives. We're always trying to claw our way to the position where we don't have to do the grunt work anymore.
And this text suggests that the grunt work, the service, is where the real spiritual value is. And it goes even further than just actions. It's about who is valued. The source highlights specific groups that God's kingdom values, which the world often marginalizes.
Who are they?
The source lists the poor, the sick, the humble.
Poor, the sick, and the humble. Not the rich, the healthy, and the proud.
It's a stark contrast. The world pushes these groups to the side. We try to fix them or ignore them or hide them because they don't produce, economic value. But the source says the kingdom of God treasures them. They are the VIPs.
And why is that? Is it just pity?
I don't think it's pity. I think it goes back to that idea of reliance. The poor and the sick. They often have no illusions about being in control of their lives. They know they're dependent. And that posture of dependence is exactly what the kingdom requires. It's the rich and powerful who have the illusion that they're in charge.
So our advantage in the world is actually our handicap in the kingdom.
That is the core of the entire argument. It really is a divine reversal. It prioritizes those who are always pushed to the back of the line.
It's just amazing how consistent this theme is. It's not just one random verse. It's a whole cohesive argument for a different way of living.
It is. And it really challenges us to ask where we are placing our value. Are we valuing what the world values or what this text says the kingdom of God values?
It's a reality check. A serious one.
And think about that eternal perspective we mentioned earlier. If this life is just a blip and the kingdom is the ultimate reality, then investing everything in being first here is just a really bad investment.
It's like buying stock in a company you know is about to go bankrupt while ignoring the one that's about to take over the entire market.
That's a very modern way to put it, but yes, it fits perfectly. The source encourages a focus on spiritual success, which looks like humility and service over worldly success, which looks like power and status.
Okay, so let's try to wrap our heads around this before we close out. We've covered a lot of ground pretty quickly.
We have.
If we look at the source material, the divine reversal, we can kind of boil it down to 4 key interpretations. I want to make sure we have these locked in.
Let's recap them. Number 1, humility and service. Greatness is not status. It is serving others.
Number 2, reversal of status. The world's VIP list is flipped. The poor, sick, and humble are at the front of the line.
Number 3, grace over merit. We saw this in the vineyard. Reward is a gift, not a wage. You can't earn your way in by clocking in early.
And number 4, eternal perspective. This whole thing really hinges on looking past the here and now. It's a call to reject pride and self-reliance.
And that rejection of self-reliance is so key. You can't be first in this framework if you're already full of yourself. There's just no room.
Now, I want to take this one step further before we go. We started this by saying, the first shall be last, is often just a phrase for patience. But after this deep dive, it feels more like a warning sign.
A warning sign? How so?
Well, just think about the world we live in. We are in the age of the influencer, the platform, the personal brand. Never in history has it been easier or more encouraged to seek to be first.
It's the currency of our age, right? Attention is everything.
Exactly. Everyone wants to be a leader. Everyone wants a following. Everyone wants to be first to comment. So here's the question. If the first are those who seek power and self-righteousness, does the very act of trying to be an influencer automatically put you at risk of being last in this framework?
That is a heavy question, and I think the source material would suggest it's an extremely high-risk activity.
Because if you're seeking the spotlight,
Then you're seeking to be first. You are, by definition, positioning yourself above others.
but if you follow that logic, how does anyone lead without seeking to be first? We need leaders, don't we? We need people to have influence. Is it even possible to have that without falling into the pride trap the source warns about?
It's a razor's edge. To lead without self-promotion. To serve without seeking credit. It goes against, social gravity.
It really does.
I think the distinction has to lie in the motivation. Are you leading because you want to be seen as the great one? Or are you leading because it's the best way you know how to serve the people around you?
Am I doing this to be seen, or am I doing this to wash feet?
Exactly. The outward action might look the same. You could be on a stage or running a company, but the internal reality is completely different. The first leads in order to be served. The last leads to serve.
That is the distinction. But it's scary, because I think for most of us, if we're really honest, we want the stage. We want the credit.
Which is why this text is so challenging. It requires a total rethinking of our motivations. It suggests that the very ambition to be superior is the thing that makes you inferior in the spiritual sense.
So the only way to win is to not try to win.
In a way, yes. The only way to be first in the kingdom is to voluntarily become last in the world, to choose the role of the servant, to identify with the marginalized.
Like a complete paradox.
It is the ultimate paradox.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought to mull over. We've talked about workers and rulers and influencers. But this week, when you're in traffic or in a meeting or you're just waiting in line at the grocery store,
You're looking at social media.
especially then, just ask yourself, where am I pushing? Where am I elbowing my way to the front? And is that firstness actually getting me where I really want to go?
Or is it moving you further back in the line that actually matters?
The divine reversal.
Yeah,
It's not just a nice idea. It's a completely different way to be human.
it certainly is.
So I'm going to be thinking about those vineyard workers all day now. I might even let someone cut in front of me in line later. Maybe.
Baby steps.
Thank you so much for walking us through this. This was a fascinating look into the divine reversal.
It was a pleasure.
And everyone listening, thanks for being here with us. We'll see you on the next deep dive. Take care.